What is up, friends? Welcome to another video. My name is Josh West with Cellar Sound. In the last few videos, we were working on vocals, and today we're actually going to take one of these vocal songs and we're going to work on some acoustic guitar and get the acoustic guitar to sound really nice with this vocal. Before we do that, as always, if you have not yet, please go grab my Ultimate Vocal Presets bundle. I created this bundle in a very specific way to help people who are learning how to EQ, how to learn how to compress, how to use saturation in your vocals. And if you're a little sure on the settings and what you should be setting your vocals to, especially with compression, this preset bundle is really going to help you out here. And it even comes with a free training video that shows you how to put these on your computer, and it shows you how to manipulate them slightly so that they will work for any vocal. And presets show up in Logic Pro and GarageBand just like this. You just hit this little factory default, and you've got all these vocals here. If we go to a compressor, which we used the big pop vocal on our last video, I've got all these settings right here, and it's really fun to kind of go around and play with these, and they really can get you a great sound. All right, let's get in this video. I'm going to push play here and show you where we kind of left off. We have a completely just dry acoustic, nothing has been mixed, and we just focused on the vocals. We have just a little bit of compression and saturation here, EQ, using some presets, and then we have a reverb, slap, and a stereo delay, going to a parallel Vox chain to add a little bit of excitement there, and then ending all right here on this combined vocal. Let's listen to it.
Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water, and I think of all the things that you're doing. In my head I paint a picture.
Cool, sounds really good. Let's just listen to this acoustic guitar.
Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water.
So this acoustic guitar was recorded with this vocal, and it was two different mics. Obviously, we had a close mic on the acoustic and a close mic on his vocal. So the first thing that I did is I tried to make sure I didn't have any phase or timing issues. I show this in another video, but I zoomed in on a point where he kind of just hit. He just kind of hit the guitar, and I lined up my vocal to this acoustic guitar with these waveforms. I just made it super big so I could see him, and then just moved it slightly over to make it perfectly in time. And if you are ever recording a acoustic vocal with acoustic guitar, it's really hard to not get phase issues, and when you combine the two, it'll kind of sound a little swishy and unclear. And I hear a lot of recordings that are done and mixed this way, but if you can line it up first, you're already going to have a super solid sound. So then when I solo this acoustic guitar, I notice that there's a lot of frequencies that are in a lot of his low notes, and it sort of makes the guitar sound a little muddy and kind of nice because you have the vocal already on this acoustic guitar track, so you can kind of hear where the acoustic guitar is sort of taking over in those ranges. And we want to make sure that those low notes are super clear throughout this performance, because the vocal is obviously a priority in this mix. So let's first start off and open up this EQ. The Logic and the GarageBand just default EQs are really great. They're the exact same EQ, and it's kind of cool because you get an analyzer that shows you what's happening in the frequency range. So let's just take a look at that real quick.
Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water.
So you can kind of see that this frequency right here is a little bit muddy. I typically don't go to this visual before listening to anything or really take this as the most serious thing, but I know that there is a lower muddy frequency, right? So muddy to me usually is somewhere between 100 to 300 hertz. It's usually in this range. If I'm starting to think that the performance is a little muddy, I'm gonna look here anyway. So, and I could see that right here at about 200, that's where we're gonna probably want to cut those frequencies. So what I normally do is I like to play the guitar, and I really like to push up a semi-narrow band about right here, and kind of sweep around and try and find that frequency that really jumps out at me whenever I play this track back. Let's try and find that.
Sometimes I go out and look across the water.
So that's definitely it right there, 187. You could hear as I was sweeping, I mean, I was raising the frequency, but it wasn't sounding crazy. And then when I got to 187 here, it really poked out and it was obvious. And that's going to be our sweet spot of where we're going to want to cut. So I'm going to bring this down to about 0. And I'm going to start cutting this. I like to have a more of a wider band when I'm cutting these low mids here, because if normally, especially for acoustic guitar, if I cut something super narrow right here, these frequencies are a little wider in comparison to the frequencies up here, and so I want to make sure to make it a musical cut and not just cut this 200 and it be a really narrow band, and it just kind of sounds fake and unmusical to me. So let's try and play this and see what we can get away with cutting.
Sometimes I go out and look across the water, and I think of all the things that you do. In my head I paint a picture.
All right, so that actually sounds like it's in a pretty good spot. I'm only cutting 4 dB here, and it's in a good spot. I accidentally went a little bit to 184, so let's try to make that back to 187. I mean, we're getting super specific here, but that's where we really liked where that was boosted. So we cut at 187, and I could tell even without having the actual vocal on, that I made the vocal clearer just from hearing his vocal in the background, which is kind of cool. So I bet if I unsolo this and we listen to both of them with just this cut, I bet those low notes of that vocal are going to come out a lot more.
Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water, and I think of all the things that you're doing. In my head I paint a picture.
Cool. So I also saw that I cut a little bit too much because I was probably listening to that vocal that was just in the background on this acoustic track. The real vocal in, I realized I cut it just slightly too much. So I turned that up about 2 dB less, and it's in a really good spot. So the last thing that I'm going to do is I am going to add a little low cut here. I don't want to cut too much of the lows, but I just want to make sure I don't get any random room tone once we start adding a little bit of compression here. So let's just see. And normally what I like to do is I'll kind of set my low cut to a spot where I think is pretty decent. And I will, let me raise that back. There we go. And I will turn it off and on and make sure that I can't audibly hear something that, like I'm losing acoustic guitar. So if you have this low cut, and sometimes people have it pretty high, if you just turn it off and on while listening to it soloed and you lose a lot of low end, you probably don't want it to be set that high. So let's just check that. Awesome. That sounds great. A lot of times if I forget to add this low cut and I mix the whole track and then I start mastering, which raises up the volume, I'll have this random rumble in the low end, and I'm like, why do I have a rumble there? And it's because of this low cut that's not there. And it's the same in the vocal, but I feel like we're so used to doing a low cut in the vocal that sometimes other instruments we kind of forget, and we can get some rumbliness there if it was a microphone, which this was recorded as a microphone. All right, so let's add some compression here. We're going to use one of the presets. So let's go to Dynamics, Compressor, Mono. All I'm wanting to do here is some of the really attacky frequencies that he hits. I want to just cut back those just a tiny bit. I'm not wanting to do anything crazy on compression because I want to keep this acoustic guitar as natural as possible, but I don't want it harshly peaking out really anywhere. So I really heard those kind of toward the end here. Yeah, cool. So we're going to go to our presets, and I'm going to pick Let's do vocal light 2. Let's just see how this one works out. And the cool thing about these presets is they do work on more things than just vocals. I've had a lot of people use the EQ presets for some string stuff, and it worked well, and the compressors for a lot of things, a lot of guitar, and they're all set in a slightly different way, and nothing is set to just smash anything, right? Like just do crazy, crazy compression. So any instruments that are kind of light and nice, you can use this stuff on, and it's pretty powerful. So in the training video, I talk about it, but basically all my settings are already preset in a really good spot for this type of compression, and all I have to do is adjust this threshold to get the amount of compression that I really want. So I'm looking for about a -2 to 3-ish of gain reduction. So I'm looking at this guy right here, and I want it to be somewhere in this area on those loud hits where he's really kind of hitting the guitar. So let's try it. All right, and I want to check this on a louder part of this song. So let's go maybe here. All right, so that huge thing is about -4, but that's really the only time he's doing that. Let's go to this section. Cool, so we're about -3 here on even those big, big loud parts. That's exactly what I want. And it makes a big difference because if I unsolo this, let's just go to this part right here. I'm going to turn off our compression and just play it. Let's just listen.
Did you have to pay that fine? Only you were dodging all the time. Are you still dizzy? Yeah.
The guitar is a little bit inconsistent, and it's kind of peeking out random points. It's getting a little soft in random points. So this compression is cutting a little bit, about -3 dB, and it's also raising the overall gain a little bit. This allows some of those softer moments in the guitar to kind of come forward a little bit without having the peaks of everything really, really, really loud. So we actually get more of the performance of the guitar through using light compression like this. So let's hear it with the compressor.
Did you have to pay that fine? Only you were dodging all the time. Are you still dizzy? Yeah.
See, in that one with the compressor on, I can hear everything. It's not just kind of this push and pull of guitar and not guitar, and it does sound super good. So let's go with that. So I'm gonna go back to the beginning here where we were at.
And I think of all the things that you're doing. In my head I paint a picture. Since I've come on home, well, my body's been a mess. I miss your gin.
All right, cool. So the guitar sounds pretty good. Sometimes when I have acoustic guitars like this and it starts to really compete with the vocal and starts to kind of cover the vocal a little bit, a lot of times I'll go around 1 to 2K here and just do sort of a wide, just a little bit of a cut, and it helps the vocal to come through a tiny bit more.
And I think of all the things that you're doing. In my head I paint a picture. Since I've come on home, well, my body's been a mess. I miss your ginger hair anyway.
And it sounds fine. I'm going to keep that there because it actually helps just a little bit. All right, cool. Now let's add a free plugin that I use a lot on this channel. Is this Fuse Audio Labs? If it'll load, yep. RSW2395C. I always say I wish I had a better name, but I love the high-end boost of this, and there's a little drive guide that I really like. So we're going to see if we can get a tiny bit more of kind of a saturated high-end from this analog style EQ in this guitar, and to make it sound just a little more prettier. Let's try.
And I think of all the things that you do. In my head I paint a picture. Since I've come on home, well, my body's been a mess. I miss your ginger hair anyway you like.
Cool, and that just kind of made it, just gave it a little bit of a high-end boost that isn't just off of this EQ, which you can do high-end boosts off of here, but normally if I'm trying to boost high-end, I never do it on a normal style EQ, like a digital EQ. I always go to more of an analog style EQ because a lot of times these high boosts are doing a lot more than just boosting the high. They're just adding a little bit of color to that boost, and it just sounds a lot more pleasing to the ear. So that's a good general rule of thumb to think about when you're EQing, when you're wanting to do some cool low-end boosts and some high-end boosts especially. Look for a really, really good analog style EQ that adds a little bit of color, and it makes that high boost more natural and just more pretty overall. And that will help you so much in your mixes. And this drive guide just adds a little bit more of that saturation thing. It's doing very, very, very little, but let's hear it without. And then in.
I think of all the things that you do. In my head I paint a picture.
Yeah, super good spot. So let's hear it with the vocal real quick.
And I think of all the things that you're doing. In my head I paint a picture. Since I've come on home, well, my body's been a mess. I miss your gin.
Cool. Super good spot. All right, so a lot of times in bigger mixes, I will take my acoustic guitar and go to its own reverb. But sometimes in just these vocal acoustic mixes, I like to try and use the reverb that I already have for my vocal. I don't like to do too much delay and craziness with just an acoustic guitar. It can sound good depending on the song, but we're trying to just create a space here and let the vocals shine. We don't want the acoustic delays all over the place in this song. And sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does, but we're going to try it. So we're looking at our reverb here. This is our vocal reverb, and we have it on bus 1. So I'm going to do a send on this acoustic guy. Let's actually raise this up so you can see this whole thing. I'm doing a send on this acoustic track, and we're going to go to bus 1, which is our reverb. And I'm going to keep the vocal turned on. I like to adjust my reverb turned on. And normally what I like to do is I will push play, I'll start to turn this up, and I'll turn it a little bit louder than where I would like it, and then I'll slowly come back to where I feel like it sits in the mix. Sometimes if you're just trying to come from below and just go all the way up and you find a sweet spot and you stop, at least for me sometimes, I found that, if I would have had that like 2 dB up, it'd be so much better. So I always like to go where I have too much and then slightly tone it back to where it sits really, really nice. And that's just a preference thing, but it just helps me mix a little bit easier. So let's try it out.
And I think of all the things that you're doing. In my head I paint a picture. Since I've come on home, well, my body's been a mess. I miss your ginger hair in a way you like. And I think of all the things that you're doing. In my head I paint a picture. Since I've come on home, well, my body's been a mess. I miss your ginger.
All right, cool. Sounding super great. So the last thing that I want to do is I think I can actually raise the guitar overall, and we're going to try that. Let's go up a dB. Let's do 2 dB and see if this is too much.
And I think of all the things that you're doing. In my head I paint a picture. Since I've come on home, well, my body's been a mess. I miss your ginger hair.
All right, that sounds great there. Let's just check it where it gets super, super loud.
Come on home, well, my body's been a mess. Miss your ginger hair and the way you like your dress. Oh, won't you come on over?
All right, so when he starts getting kind of big, which is probably all of this little section.
Did you have to pay that fine? Only you were dodging all the time. Are you still dizzy? Yeah.
All right, so it's in a really good spot, but it's also just slightly too much. So I'm going to quickly do some automation. So we're going to hit A on the keyboard. Let's just lower our mix guy here and make these a little bit bigger. Okay, so I'm going to go right before he gets big. I'm going to make a little dot. I'm going to make a little dot right after that. And then we're going to go to the end of this section. Let's just play. Yeah, so we're going to go right here, make a dot, make a dot. Okay, so I'm going to go to these 2 inside dots because the outside dots are protecting it from changing. So we just kind of set those so that nothing will change, and the inside dots are what we actually want to change. So I'm going to go back down to 0 on these because it sounded good at 0, as close as we can. There we go. Sounded really good at 0 whenever we listened to it earlier, but the soft stuff sounds great at 2. Okay, and let's just play this.
Did you have to pay that fine? Only you were dodging all the time. Are you still dizzy? Yeah. Since I've come out home, well, my body's been a mess. Wish your ginger hair and the way you like your dress.
All right, so this just takes some practice, but that sounds way better. At 0, when he really starts getting loud with the acoustic, it's perfect. And it really sits with his vocal quite well. He is getting louder on his vocal, but it just wasn't quite loud enough to overpower this guitar here. But at +2 in these other sections, it's almost like in the same range with this vocal and fitting really nicely.
Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water.
Yeah, super sweet spot. So this song, you can go in, we can tweak more, we can do a bunch of other fun stuff, but overall this song is in a really, really good spot, and it's kind of ready just to be, this could be mastered and put out as a live recording because it was just a one-take recording with video, and we're ready to go. So just to recap, all we really did with this acoustic guitar is we lined it up to make sure that we didn't have any phasing issues, so that wishy-washy stuff. We just did some EQ, very light EQ, just got some muddy stuff out of the way, took the low rumble out, and we made a little room for the vocal. We used a preset to sort of level out our guitar very lightly, not doing anything too crazy to keep it musical, and it actually fit a lot better with the vocal. And then we just added a little bit of nice analog high end here that made it sound really nice and fit pretty well there. And then the last thing that we did is we just added a little bit of reverb and some automation in that big chorus section, and the song's sounding pretty sweet. So thank you so much for watching. That is the acoustic guitar video. If you haven't yet, go grab those presets. We used the preset today on this comp, and it sounded great. It's a Vocal Light 2 preset, but it works so good on acoustic guitar as well. And a lot of these presets here work great. And it truly is as easy as picking a preset, just messing with this threshold just a tiny bit to get the desired compression that you want, and then you don't have to worry about all these other knobs that are all over the place here. You can just do one knob and you'll feel really satisfied with the sound that you get. And it goes the same for EQ. I have a training video where we talk about EQ, and we did a little bit of it in the last video, but when you download these presets, you get the training video that shows you how to put them in your computer and how to manipulate them just like that so that you can have the desired effect you want. So thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.